This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Bari, and everybody else. How you doing? Okay, so we're going to talk about, we don't have so much time. One second, let me give you the right sheet. I hope you have the right sheet. Fine. Yeah, we're going to talk about an Indian, Birchas HaTorah. This happens to be one of my favorite subjects when the Yom Tov of Shavuos is coming. So I want to share with you a Beis Yosef. Because we already started off a little bit late, so let's try to go quick. Ari, you have a sheet? I need you. I need your Lomdus. You ready? Okay, good. I need someone to learn some tells. You never learned that? I need 1 second. Toronto. What's it called? Now you saw Toronto. Okay, now you're good. Fine. Beis Yosef says like this. Beis Yosef Siman Mem Zayin. Kosav v'tshuvas harashba. Shaila. Beis Yosef quotes a Rashba. When we make Birchas HaTorah every morning, not when you get an aliyah. When you in the morning you wake up, and the first thing you do is you wash negel vaser, obviously, and then you take care of your needs, and then before you daven, you wash your hands, you make al natil sidayim, you make an asher yatzar, you juxtapose alekai neshama to asher yatzar, right? You know that? Mishnah Berurah says that you juxtapose alekai neshama to asher yatzar. Really, chadchila alekai neshama and asher yatzar is a bracha smucha l'chaverta, and then you say Birchas HaTorah. Question is, why lama einanu mevarchim la'achreha? Why don't you make Birchas HaTorah when you're finished learning? Let's say at 12:30 when the shiur is over, you should make. Just joking. We go relax. Okay. When the shiur is over, you should make Birchas HaTorah when the shiur is over. Why? Because we do that. That's what we do. When you get an aliyah, you make Birchas HaTorah before and after. So you should make, after you finish learning, you should make Birchas HaTorah after. And that's the Kajah of the Rashba. Tshuva. The Rashba answers as follows. Kriyas HaTorah mitzvah. You know why? Because Kriyas HaTorah is a mitzvah. Ve'ein mevarchin ala mitzvahs achreim. And we don't make brachas on mitzvahs when they're done. K'may sha'amru b'perek bas siman. Like we say in the Gemara Nida. What is that referring to? The Gemara Nida brings a Mishnah. The Mishnah says anything that needs a bracha after it needs a bracha before, and there are things that need a bracha before and they don't need a bracha after. So the Gemara says, what is that coming to include? So the Gemara says it's coming to include mitzvahs. Mitzvahs you make a bracha before and you don't make a bracha after. And the Gemara asks, what about in Eretz Yisrael that they made a bracha when they took off their tefillin, Asher Kedushan Mitzvah Tzivano Lishmar Chukav. In Eretz Yisrael, they taka made brachas when they finished the mitzvahs. So the Gemara says the Mishnah is coming to teach me something else. But we paskin that when you finish doing a mitzvah, let's say you take a lulav and esrog. So before you take it, you say Asher Kedushan Mitzvah Tzivano Al Natilas Lulav. When you put it down, you don't make a bracha. When you blow shofar, you make a bracha. Al l'shmaya kol shofar. When you finish blowing, you don't make a bracha. So we don't make a bracha on Torah either. I mean, what's the kasha? Why do you make a bracha? Why don't you make a bracha after? We don't make a bracha after mitzvahs. That's the first answer of the Rashba.
After Megillah, we make a bracha, no?
Yeah, that's because Megillah is not a mitzvah. So what is it? So it's a drabana. What? That's the first answer. We never make brachas when you finish doing a mitzvah. So the question is, what was the question? But the answer is we don't do that.
What we do, Birchas Hamazon.
Birchas Hamazon is not a mitzvah. You make a bracha achroina. So let's think about situations where you make a bracha after. Birchas HaTorah when you get an aliyah.
Megillah.
Hallel.
Who's after? The end of Hallel.
Hallel. And
eating. There's never an end. They're all Birchas Haidah.
Okay.
No, but eating when it's a Suda, right? If you have a Suda.
Whenever you eat anything, you always make a bracha achrona.
No,
Any hana, you make a bracha when you're done.
When you have a Suda, right? But it's Suda mitzvah. You also
What do you mean a sus mitzvah?
like you're making a siyum or on Yom Tov, you're making a bracha achrona, so it's a mitzvah to eat. So you eat.
But even if it wouldn't be a mitzvah to eat, you make a bracha achrona. The bracha is not changed.
But maybe in that situation, you don't make a bracha achrona.
Why not?
Because the mitzvah.
So you don't, but you make it on the hana. That's answer number one. Answer number one is we don't make brachas when we finish mitzvahs. Says the Beis Yosef, quoting the Rashba, we make a bracha at the end of an aliyah, No, Hasam Takanas Moshe ve'Ezra. Kriyas HaTorah is a takana of Moshe. It's a takana of Ezra. Val takana is mevarchem lefneim ulachreim. And on a takana you make a bracha before and after. Right? And so you say if it's a takana, so you're saying that if I step out by laning, then I have to make it out. Of course, make it up. Of course, that's what I'm saying. If you step out during an aliyah, you need to go to another shul and make up that aliyah. Of course you do. In fact, there are 248 Kriyas HaTorah a year. You can't miss any of them because they correspond to your 248 limbs. 248 Avarim. Okay, anyway, that's just a side point. So, in other words, don't ask on me, says the Rashba, that you do make a bracha when you finish laning, because that's a takana, and we make brachas on takanas. K'demarchinan b'halel, u'megillah, halel is a takana, Megillas Esther is a takana. So when I said before it's not a mitzvah, what I meant was, it's not a mitzvah only, it's a takana. Any takana d'Rabbanan, you make a bracha before, a bracha after. Mitzvahs, you don't make a bracha after. Therefore, there's a difference between learning and Kriyas HaTorah. Kriyas HaTorah is a takana. Takana, you make a bracha before and after. A mitzvah, you only make a bracha before. Megillah, you make a bracha before. Hadlakas Neros, what?
Why don't we make a bracha after?
Hadlakas Ner Chanukah, you should say, what, it's a takana? So make a bracha when you're finished.
Which ones are not takana?
All the 613 mitzvahs and all the mitzvahs d'Rabbanan. The only takanas are Kriyas HaTorah, Kriyas HaHalel, and Megillah. So Asi wants to know, why don't we make a bracha when we finished Hadlakas, Ner, Chanukah? I guess not a takana. Now, why Megillah is a takana and Chanukah is not, that's a good question. But that's the first answer of the Rashba.
You have to light them there anyway. It's not on every person.
At what point?
The one person you have. It's not on, you could be yours with somebody else. Megillah, you need to hear yourself. Could that be a difference?
Maybe. It's on the bias. Okay. That's the answer of the Rashba. Comes the Beis Yosef. My maybes are good. It's like, amazing. Okay, sorry. I'm understated. Okay, fine. V'li nira, says the Beis Yosef. I would answer the Rashba's kasha differently. Even if you want to go like the Bnei Marava in Masechta Nida, that they make brachas after mitzvahs, like kasha. There's no kasha why we don't make a bracha when we finish learning. Like Yossi said, Dikivan the mitzvahs hagiyas HaTorah hi kol hayom v'chol halayla, since you're obligated to learn all day and all night, meaning how much are you obligated to learn every day? An hour and a half, 2 hours, 2 hours. You're obligated to learn 24 hours a day. Elamai, you have to go to work, you have to do carpool, you have to eat dinner, so you have a p'tur. But the moment supper is over, before the kids come to homework, you have to open up the sefer. In other words, the obligation to learn rests on a person all day long. There's no time that you're not chayiv to learn Torah. In other words, when you're patur from learning? When you're 6 feet under, that's one time that you're patur from learning. Another time is when it's not day and not night. Those are the 2 times you're patur from learning. Elamai, you can't always sort of act upon one's chayiv because you have things that exempt you. So therefore, since you're always chayiv, so the mitzvah is never over. So the mitzvah is never over, like they used to say in camp. Learning never ends, learning never ends. Learning groups are now over, right? But it's the yisoid. Learning is never, right? Learning never ends. The yisoid is that the chiyuv is always murkav al kisvei. It's always riding on your shoulders. And therefore, you can't make a bracha achroina because you're always chayiv.
Why are you making bracha Rishona?
Because it's before I'm doing it. It's before the performance.
Right. You went to sleep and you had a left.
If we're saying it's continuous, then it can be
When you're
continuous.
sleeping, you can't do it till you see a class.
No, in other
That's not
words,
true. If you say Shavuos night, you're still mechayiv to make a bracha Birchas HaTorah.
Not mechayiv, you should just be.
You need somebody, right?
if you slept,
have to make it.
okay, there's a machloek Kiveger Paskins that if you slept during the day, at least a half hour, 30 minutes, so then you can make Birchas HaTorah. In fact, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says if you sleep during the day 30 minutes, it could be you have to make Birchas HaTorah when you wake up. Stam, because there's such a shita. But if you stay up all night and you slept 30 minutes during the day, then Birchas HaTorah you can make. Okay, so these are the 2 answers to the kasha of the Rashba. The Rashba's kasha is, why don't you make Birchas HaTorah when you finish learning? Answer number 1 is, we never make brachas when we finish mitzvahs. Comes the Beis Yosef, learning never ends. Comes the Steipler in the Kilas Yaakov, in Masechta Brachas Siman Chav Daled, says the Steipler, number 3, V'nira bekavanas Beis Yosef. Let me explain the Beis Yosef. The afilu kishehu anos, what the Beis Yosef meaning I have a kasha on the Beis Yosef. But the guy doesn't open up a sefer the whole day, besides when he makes Birchas HaTorah in the morning. So you're telling me, since he's chayiv to learn the whole day, therefore there's no hefsek, but he's not actually learning. So if he's not actually learning, so then in reality he's being mafsik from the time he made the bracha to the next learning, because he's not actually learning the whole day. The fact that he's chayiv to learn, why is that important? So the Steipler explains, even though the guy is an anos, and he's mukhrach lahafsek, the nira pashud ki ein alav ba'isha chiyav higias HaTorah. And when a person has an extenuating circumstance, he's not actually chayiv to learn. Mikamaka me'achar de'ein haptur machmas shenigmara ha-mitzvah, but since the exemption is not because the mitzvah has completed, ela machmas ha'adam v'terdosav, only because of the person and his preoccupations and what he's busy with, this is not called the end of a mitzvah, it's just a little hefsik. And even if you were to make a bracha, when mitzvahs would be over, you would not be able to make a bracha when you finish learning, because learning is never over. Okay. But the Steipler now has the following amazing question. And that is, what in the world is the Beis Yosef doing? Listen, as follows. I have a question. I have two questions. Why didn't the sun rise this morning? I was quite curious. Why didn't the sun rise this morning? The answer is because since there would be a guy who would speak Lashon Hara today, Hashem didn't bring up the sun. Okay, that's my teretz. And the second teretz is because it did rise.
I'm not following.
Why not? Right? Here's the kasha is, why didn't the sun rise this morning? Answer number one is it did rise. Answer number two is because there was a guy who was going to do an Avera today, so Hashem didn't want to bring up the sun. Understand? Once the reality is the sun rose, what are you coming up with Lomdus terutzim why the sun didn't rise? It did rise. So why would you even entertain the question if it's not a question? So understand, we have a question here, which is, says the Steipler, it seems to be, excuse the expression, not a good question, a ridiculous question. Why don't we make a bracha when we finish learning? So the first answer is, because we don't make brachos when mitzvahs are over. And now I'm going to tell you a Lomdus teretz. You know what the Lomdus teretz is? Because the learning is never over. What are you giving me a Lomdus teretz for? The question is not a question. The question is a ridiculous question. Why don't we make a bracha at the end of learning? We never make a bracha at the end of a mitzvah. I have a question. Why don't we stand on our head in shul? So the first answer is, why? Because it's going to be hard to daven when you're standing on your head. And the second answer is, because we don't. So what are you telling me reasons why we don't? We don't. What's the Rajba's kasha? Here the Rajba has a kasha. He came into the Beis Medrash. He asked, why don't we make a bracha when a shiur is over? So he gave a good answer. The Rajba gave a good answer. We don't make a bracha when mitzvahs are over. Comes the Beis Yosef, in my opinion, we don't make a bracha because we don't make a bracha when mitzvahs are over. Excuse me, we don't make a bracha because learning is never over. Why do I need such a Lomdus teretz? Why do I need a second teretz? It's not even a question. Doesn't seem to be a very compelling question. We never make a bracha when we finish a mitzvah. So why would the Beis Yosef have to give a second teretz? The biggest pella is, the Steipler says, I found the Shibali Haleket who asked the question, and he only gives the Beis Yosef's answer. He doesn't even give the Rajba's answer. Look in number 4. Kasav Harav Rabbeinu Yishaya. The Shibali Haleket quotes Rabbeinu Yishaya. This that we said, that someone who wakes up early has to make a bracha before it, learning. We make a bracha before and after Birchas, we get an aliyah. No, the hasam kal echad ve'echad goymer mitzvasai. There, when you finish laning, the laning is over. Aval hacha ein kitzvah. Learning never ends. Ask the Steipler, Rebbeinu Shalom, what kind of answer? Why is the Shibali Haleket? Not only does he ask the question, he doesn't even give the right answer. He should just say, we don't say a bracha when a shiur is over because we never, ever, ever, ever say a bracha at the end of a mitzvah. What's he giving the secondary answer? Because technically the mitzvah is never over because you're always chayiv to learn. It's pashut why you don't make a bracha. You don't make a bracha when the shiur is over because we never make a bracha when a mitzvah is over. That's the kasha of the Steipler. And the Steipler advances the following amazing yesod. Steipler says, I'm going to tell you a halacha now. Let's say I say, can I pick on you, Ari? No, but only believe shalom. Yeah?
You said you're only picking on me, believe shalom?
No, only if you're masking, believe shalom, I could pick on you.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah,
Let's say I make a neder, I'm not getting any hana from Ari Badner.
Believe shalom.
Let's say I make that neder.
Be tough. You have a tough life.
Okay? Let's say I make such a neder. Then comes Rosh Hashanah, and I want to blow a shofar. Can I blow Ari Badner's shofar? Yes. Now let's start like this. Let's say I make a neder, I'm not going to get hana from Ari Badner. Then Ari Badner says, Rabbi, because I love your shir so much, I want you to come to my house for Shabbos, for Friday night meal, Shabbos day meal, Shal Shudis, for the rest of my life. Right? So am I allowed to eat in Ari Badner's house? I can't, because I made a neder. I can't go to his house. So I can't get hana, even though the food is very delicious.
But those are all mitzvahs, those are the Shabbos.
Oh, no. But still, I know on a regular Tuesday, actually he invited me for every meal, for every night. I can't be nana, including bread. I can't be nana from him. But could I blow his shofar? I could blow his shofar. Why? Mitzvos lav lehenus nitnu. God did not give us mitzvahs to make us feel good. What does Rashi say? Ella liyos oil al tzavarecha. Mitzvahs are responsibilities. They're not feel goods. Fine. Am I allowed to shake his lulav and esrog? Yes. Am I allowed to wear his tzitzis? Yes. Am I allowed to wear his tefillin? Yes. Why? Because I'm not getting hana from Ari Badner. What hana do I get from putting on tefillin? Tefillin is an oil. It's a responsibility. I'm allowed to wear his tefillin. I'm allowed to wear his tzitzis. I'm allowed to blow his shofar. But the kasha is, Ari Badner has a beautiful svarim collection. Am I allowed to borrow his svarim? Not allowed to borrow his svarim. Why? The mitzvahs lav lehenus nitnu. Why am I allowed to blow his shofar? I'm allowed to wear his tzitzis, and I'm allowed to wear his tefillin.
But you would be able to take my siddur and read Birchas HaTorah from it.
I could take your siddur and read Birchas HaTorah, because that's just a mitzvah.
Right.
But why can't I borrow your svarim? So the Taz says we learn from here Yesoid Atzam. Learning Torah is not a mitzvah. Learning Torah is hana. Learning Torah is hana. It's pleasure. Shaking lulav and esrog, you get nothing out of it. No, you're not getting that. No physical sensation, emotional sensation, psychological. You don't get hana by doing mitzvahs. But Torah, you get hana. David HaMelech says, Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Lev. You get real, tangible, essential hana when you learn Torah. So, and that's not a... Now, if, let's say I have a mishigas. I love shaking a lulav and esrog. I get such a high from it. So that's your mishigas. You happen to get a high from it. Good, it has nothing to do with the mitzvah. I'm allowed to shake Ari Badner's lulav and esrog, even if I personally get a kick out of shaking a lulav and esrog. But I cannot, what? You like that, Mendy?
I can't smell his esrog though.
I can't smell, because that's secondary. That's not the mitzvah, right? But, says the Taz wants to know, look at number 7. Ulefiza vadai, loy kashamidi, meyahida sif yud aleph. The Taz wants to know why in Sif Yud Aleph, if you aser hana, you can't use your friend's sefer, but you could use his shofar and you could use his lulav, like kasha, sha'aser lomay b'sefer nesalav, b'lav ha'isar sham elamitam dehacha devadai HaTorah misameches leiv. The Torah makes you happy. Sha'arei aser lomay b'mei avela. If a person like Elena was an avel, he's not allowed to learn. Why? He's allowed to do mitzvahs, he's not allowed to learn. Why? Because you're not to be happy when you're an Avil. All other mitzvahs were not given to make you happy. Torah was given to make you happy.
So why are we making a bracha at all? It's not a mitzvah. What's the bracha?
Okay, let's add one more step. The Eglei Tal, the Sachat Shava Rebbe, in the Eglei Tal. You know who the Sachat who wrote the Shavuos Teshuvos Avnei Nezer? And his son was the Shem Mishmuel. My great-grandfather was the Rav of the city of Sachachav and a Talmud of the Shem Mishmuel. The Eglei Tal writes as follows. Eglei Tal says that people make a big mistake. They think, you know what Limud HaTorah Lishma is? Limud HaTorah Lishma, people think is, you open up a Gemara and you break your head over it. Vayomer, and he said, L2, Moshe, Mashkin, you water, base the house, Hashlachin, of messenger waters, right? But as soon as you get a geschmack in the learning, forget it. You're learning shalei lishma because you're getting something out of it. People think if you enjoy learning, it's shalei lishma. Says the Avnei Nezer, just the opposite. If you don't learn and you enjoy it, let's say you're breaking your head, you're not fully learning. The mitzvah is not to learn. The mitzvah is to get hana. The mitzvah of learning, it's not that whatever enjoyment you get is like secondary. The mitzvah is get enjoyment from your learning. That is the suras and the foundation of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The mitzvah is to enjoy your learning.
So if you learn and you don't enjoy it, you don't get the mitzvah?
You don't fully, you're not yotze b'shleimus, correct. It's a chesaron in the mitzvah. No, you're not out. Same way if somebody learns shaloi lishma, eventually you'll get there. If you learn and you don't enjoy it, it's not the full mitzvah. And he quotes, what? Yeah, in other words, I have a question.
You have to love every single topic of Shas, because you have to love the Torah, you have to love the topic.
You enjoy it. You enjoy it.
How could you enjoy certain...
Let's say you don't like learning mitzvahs.
Stabs a needle through your arm. It's not enjoyable.
Correct.
Right, so if you learn something that's like, I don't know...
Murder?
How do you enjoy Churban Beis HaMikdash?
That's why you're allowed to learn Churban Beis HaMikdash on Tisha B'Av. Because since you're not enjoying it, that's not Talmud Torah.
Let's see that. No, it's
right?
Like learning Churban Beis HaMikdash. How do you enjoy Churban Beis HaMikdash? It's terrible. Maybe I'm saying like
on some level, besides the fact that it's a sad subject.
And his tummy got destroyed.
So you shouldn't make a bracha Birchas HaTorah on it then? If you learn something
Akiva 24,000 got.
So it seems like there's something intrinsic about the Torah that it makes the neshama happy. It exhilarates the neshama.
That's not cognitive. That means it's like it's deep in your psyche. That means that we're bifurcating feelings.
No. So the answer is it's not as deep as you think. It's not the person would say, no, I'm not in touch with it. No, you're in touch with it more than you think. It gives you some kind of real satisfaction. Learning gives you no, it's not the topic. What the learning, the material, the material gives you hana. The Torah's Hashem programmed the human being that the same way when you eat a bagel. You eat a bagel and you chew it, so the starches are transformed into something sugary, and it gives you enjoyment. When you learn, it gives you. So you say, "I don't enjoy it." So the answer is like this. By the way, I'm sorry. I don't beat around the bush. Let's say a guy says, "I don't like ice cream. It tastes disgusting to me." So the guy needs to go to a doctor and get his taste buds checked and see, maybe he drank vinegar the day before. He probably drank vinegar the day before. He's dulled his senses.
No, but not everybody
but likewise,
salmon ice cream.
What are these phones? Can I borrow your phone? Can I borrow your phone for a second?
I don't bring it to the
Okay, good, that's the right answer. That's why I picked on him. I need a phone. Anybody, I forget. Okay, they have these devices. If somebody learns and they don't enjoy it, that's because they drank vinegar an hour before. They were sitting in front of a screen for an hour before and of course they don't enjoy their learning. They dulled their ability to have enjoyment from learning, or they looked at things that are improper, or they said things that were improper. That wanes and dulls the ability to enjoy learning. But if a person didn't do that, then naturally the way they're programmed, they'll enjoy the learning. Therefore, based on the above, Ari Badner, the Steipler says that the Havamina of the Rajba, the kasha was, what's the Rajba asking? Why don't we make a bracha when learning is over? What kind of kasha is that? We never make a bracha when mitzvahs are over. The answer is, says the Steipler, you know what the Rajba thought? The Rajba thought that the reason you should make a bracha when you finish learning, he says, why do you make a bracha before you learn? You think you make a bracha before you learn only because you're doing a mitzvah? No, because that can't be, because then the Rajba would never ask you should make a bracha when you're done. The Rajba thought that you should make a bracha when you finish learning the same way. When you drink a Snapple, you make a bracha before and you make a bracha after. You make Birchas Hanehenin. You make a Shahakol and you make a Bar Nefashos. Likewise, the Rajba held that since Limud HaTorah is not just a mitzvah, but it's also a Hana, Asr la'adam le'hanos me'olam hazeh b'li bracha. You need to make a bracha before, and you need to make a bracha after. It's hana. You can't eat pizza without making a bracha achroina. You can't learn without making a bracha achroina. That was the kasha of the Rashba.
So what are the brachas we make when you have an aliyah?
That's what. So that was the kasha. The answer is we don't make a bracha on mitzvahs, regardless of whether you get hana from them or not. Comes the Beis Yosef, and the Beis Yosef says, no, but this mitzvah you should make a bracha on. You know why? Because it's not just a mitzvah, it's pizza. And the only answer he could come up with is, what? But you're eating pizza all day. So if a person's eating pizza all day, when are you going to make a bracha achroina? If you're about to have another slice, right? If you're about to have another slice, you can't make a bracha achroina. So since you're obligated to learn whenever you have a chance, you can never say the bracha is over, so you can't make a bracha achroina. That's the chiddush of the Steipler. He says, let's take a look at number 9. V'oid nir lani az daiti.
Well, you go to sleep and you make a
The be'emes, we're going to see. Because the truth is, the Levush asks, so make it before you go to sleep. No, how do you go to sleep at night? How do you go to sleep? You go to sleep, you're learning, and you fall asleep from learning. You're not pater. When do you become pater from Talmud Torah at night?
That's
when
not
you're,
the question.
When you're sleeping.
The question isn't Torah. The guy's falling asleep, and he's really not learning before he goes to sleep.
Why is he not learning?
And he's just not.
But he should be.
But this is
so it's not over.
The question is whether or not he will. If he knows he's not.
Right. So the answer is the reason he's not is because, let's say, he needs to relax and he needs some moments of quiet. So, but he still has the obligation, but he has a legitimate p'tor. He has a legitimate p'tor.
Okay? Someone becomes an avel midday.
Yeah.
So he beginning he made Birchas HaTorah, and now he cannot learn. He has a p'tor from learning. So then, does he make a bracha achroina?
You can't make brachas either.
So there's a shaila whether an avel's pater from learning. Could be he's still chayev to learn the things that he's allowed to learn.
Okay, but there's the shaila. Let's say on the tzad that it's not the shaila.
On the tzad that it's machlokes between on the tzad that an avel's pater from learning, you should make a bracha.
You don't make a bracha on the circumstance on rare circumstances.
Erev Tisha B'Av.
He's not chayiv anymore. So you should make a bracha.
Right.
Good count. So the answer is, the rabbis weren't masakin for that situation.
We don't make that kind of.
No, but Ari feels he just won an argument because he's saying really he should, and I'm saying really he's right, but right. So maybe you won. That's it.
I didn't win. I don't want to win.
You won.
I don't want to win.
What do you mean? Be the first guy who ever won. Okay, be the.
I want to win. I'm trying to.
Okay.
I'm getting hana now.
If we masakin
right away after making the bracha.
I have to make a bracha right now. I got so much hana.
Oh, so Asi wants to know. Asi, I didn't hear that. Maybe it's better I didn't hear it. Okay. Asi wants to know if it's a Birchas Hanenin, are you allowed to be mafsik between Birchas HaTorah and learning? No. Even if it's a Birchas HaMitzvah, you're not allowed to be mafsik. Let's say you make a bracha, right, and you go shmooze, and then you shake your lulav. You're not Yotzei, you're a mafsik between them. Even if it's a
There's brachas, between someone. What should you do, right?
That's why, right after Birchas HaTorah, you Barecha Hashem Yishmerecha, that Torah Shebechsav, right? Fine. Okay, so, one second. Say, V'oid, Nirlani es daiti, the Yesh Loimar, the Be'emes das Rabbeinu Yeshayahu Kedash Shar Poiskim. The Rabbeinu Yeshaya holds, like the other Poiskim, Dulay Kaimalan Kivnei Marava, Levarech Al Gemar Shar Mitzvahs. Really, you could say like this. Don't think that the reason why the Shibali Haleket didn't answer that we don't make a bracha when mitzvahs are over is because he holds like the Shitas that you do make brachas when mitzvahs are over. No. Ella the Talmud Torah Shani Mishar Mitzvahs. Talmud Torah is different than all other mitzvahs. The Yesh Loimar, the Talmud Torah, Milvad Shehabracha Hi Birchas HaMitzvahs, Kachol Mitzvah Shabbatara. Talmud Torah, besides the fact that it's like a bracha on all mitzvahs, Yesh ba gam kein din bracha kein brachas hanenin. It has a din of a bracha as if you'd be getting hana. Vezehu al pimasha kasav hataz, and he quotes the Taz that says there's a chiluk between when you make a neder and you ask for somebody to get hana, whether you're allowed to use the shofar or you're allowed to borrow his sefer. Skip down to about 7 lines on the bottom. Ulefizeh yesh loimer sheberchas HaTorah inyana nami mitzad berchas hanenin. Look in the Ran. In Nedarim, he says this idea b'shem Rabbeinu Yoina, but other mitzvahs we say mitzvahs lav l'henusnin. V'nira shekein muchach minusach habrachos sheberchas HaTorah. This is muchach that it's a berchas HaTorah. Listen to this raya. Why? The al ha-mitzvahs mevarchinan asher kiddushan mitzvahs avatzivanu. I have a question, says the Steipler. What's a Birchas HaMitzvah? What's the normal text for a Birchas HaMitzvah? Asher kishom tzvanu al netilas ula, kishom tzvanu al lishmaya kol shofar, al netilas yadayim. We don't say Asher kishom tzvanu al limud HaTorah. We say, what do we say? We say Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'nasan lanu as Torah. So we're making a bracha on the chefza. We're not making a bracha on the maisa. Last week, we're making a bracha on the maisa. So listen to what on the chefza of Torah. Hainu d'mavarchinon al maisa ha-mitzvah al shekishanu l'kayim es ha-mitzvah.
You make both actually. We say last week.
Ah,
We do both.
v'loi mivarchinon al shabara lanu es ha-chefza. Do we ever say Ribbon Sham? Thank you so much. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Asher bara lulav ve'esrog. Asher bara shofar. Asher bara yadayim. No, we make a bracha on the Maisa. By Birchas Hanenin, thank you Hashem, you created a bagel, you created Snapple. By the way, don't eat either. That you created X, Y, and Z. But here, we don't make a bracha. Asher, Baruch atah Hashem, Asher nasan lanu hayicholes le'echal. Asher, we don't make a bracha on the maisa. By nenin, we don't make a bracha on the maisa. We make a bracha on the food that we're eating. Hu ibcha shein mevarchen al maisa achila shoichel el ala chifza shabar hakadosh baruch hu boirei pri ha'etz hamoitzi lechem min haaretz v'chein kulam. So there's a fundamental difference between Birchas HaMitzvah and Birchas HaNenen. Birchas HaNenen, we make a bracha on the object that you're about to be nene on. Birchas HaMitzvah, you make the bracha on the action. Why? The toifes habracha kachush mavarcha hakadosh baruch hu ashabara es hadavar shenenen minen. By Birchas HaTorah Shachris, there are two brachas. So Moshe said, Asher kiddisham zazal divrei Torah, that's like a Birchas HaMitzvah. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim is a Birchas HaNenen. Therefore, Rabbeinu Yishai had a gevaldige kasha. Why don't we make a bracha achroina? Out Birchas HaMitzvah avada, don't make a bracha achroina. But out Birchas HaNenen, you should make a bracha achroina. And the answer is because you're never exempt. So since you're never exempt, it's never over. So Lamaisa, the Steipler learns, just speak out one interesting thing. The Steipler learns that we have two Birchas HaTorah in the morning. Each one is sort of formulated differently. Last week, B'divrei Torah is Ke'ein Birchas HaMitzvah. Asher Bachar Banu is Ke'ein Birchas HaNenin. Why don't we make a bracha achroina? The answer is because it's never over. I'm just going to say over very quickly, for the sake of time, there's a beautiful Levush. And Levush wants to know, I have to say over this part, Levush wants to know as follows. Levush wants to know, what does the Gemara say in Mesechta Nedarim? That Mibnei ma of the haaretz. Mibnei ma of the haaretz. You ready for this one? This is going to be the most important thing I ever said in the shul today. Okay? The Gemara Nedarim asks, Mibnei ma of the haaretz. Why was Eretz Yisrael destroyed? Mibnei shaloi berchu b'Torah b'tchila. They didn't make Birchas HaTorah. And the Gemara says, Davar dezeh nishal lechachamim, lenaviyim, l'malachi Hashem. They asked the rabbis, they asked the prophets, they asked the heavenly angels, why is God destroying Eretz Yisrael? And what was the answer? Nobody knew until Hashem said, Ala azvam es Torah si, Hashem nasa, right? Because they forsook the Torah, which means they didn't make Birchas HaTorah. So I have one question. It's not rocket science. Why couldn't the Nevi'im see b'nevuah that people were coming into shul and they were going from Atoivu till Birchas HaShachar and skipping Birchas HaTorah? Why couldn't the Chachamim see that people were skipping Birchas HaTorah? Why couldn't the Malachim see that people were skipping Birchas HaTorah? It's not rocket science. If you're searching for an Aver, Birchas HaTorah is a big Aver if somebody skips it. Birchas HaTorah is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Shagas Aryeh paskins. We paskin lahalacha pretty much. Birchas HaTorah is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Why couldn't anyone figure out that they weren't making Birchas HaTorah? Number two, asked Levush. Number two, asked Levush. The Gemara says the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because Avodah Zarah, Gil Arayos, and Shvichas Damim. What are you coming to me that they didn't make Birchas HaTorah? They violated the big three. What are you making up things they didn't say Birchas HaTorah? Ready for the Levush? Levush says, I know why the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Avodah Zarah, Gil Arayos, Shvichas Damim. You know what the kasha of Mibnei Ma of the Haaretz is? The kasha is, in the last generation, we had Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Ruderman, Rav Aaron Kotler, Chazoy Nish, the Steipler, Rav Avadia Yosef, Rav Yashiv, Shalmazam and Orbach, and many, many Gedolim. So who do we have today? Why aren't there any Gedolim today? We have so many yeshivas, we have so much Torah, we have Koilim, we have Yisachar Zavulans, where are all the big rabbis? Why don't we have big Gedolim today? You know why? Because people don't make Birchas HaTorah. But people do make Birchas HaTorah. The kasha was, in the first Beis HaMikdash, we used to have Nevi'im. Why aren't there any Nevi'im anymore? You know why? Because when the kid comes home and the kid says, Tati, why did you make Birchas HaTorah this morning? The father said, I made Birchas HaTorah because I make a bracha when I take a lulav, and I make a bracha when I take a shofar, and I make a bracha whenever I do a mitzvah. And the father didn't say, I make Birchas HaTorah because I love to learn. The problem was Avada, they were making Birchas HaTorah. Moshe chapped it, right? Avada, they made Birchas HaTorah. But they made Birchas HaTorah for the wrong reason. People thought, I have to blow shofar, and I have to put on tefillin, and I have to wear tzitzis, and I have to learn. You don't have to learn. I have to eat. You don't have to eat. You want to eat. You don't have to learn. You want to learn. If you don't learn, you're going to be miserable.
Brachas?
Which brachas?
Yeah.
The Birchas HaTorah.
Which one?
He's not mechalik. He seems to learn both are.
It has to be the one we're talking about. Then it's not.
No, both are. He learns, it could be both are Birchas HaNenim. The Levush learns that Pshat in the Gemara, they didn't make Birchas HaTorah. They did, but they didn't know why they were making it. They didn't know why they were making it. So now I'm going to tell you one other thing Levush says. Right? The Rabbeinu Yeshaya and the Rajva asked, why don't we make a bracha when you finish learning? And what was the answer? Two answers. Either we never make a bracha when the conclusion of the mitzvah, or what? Or it's never over. Says the Levush, a third answer. We do make a bracha when you finish learning. The problem is, you're never finished. At what point in time are you patur from learning? The answer is when you're sleeping. But you can't make a bracha when you're sleeping. So when are you going to make the bracha? Immediately before you fall asleep? But you have to be learning then. Doesn't mean you can be. It doesn't mean you could fulfill it. But there's an obligation if you're able to. Says the Levush, when you get up in the morning, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. It's a bracha achroina on yesterday's learning. And then you start off, Asher Bachar Banu is a bracha rishona on today's learning. So Hashem gave me a beautiful matana. I have a kasha. What's the halacha if you ate pizza and you fell asleep for 7 hours and you wake up? You can bench? No. So how could you learn? Oh! There's one eitzah! V'harev no Hashem Elokeinu es divrei soiras chabafinu. Rebbeinu shall make it that yesterday's learning I should still taste it in my mouth. Now I can make a bracha achroina.
Well, so you're saying you could learn when you wake up without saying Birchas HaTorah then?
No, I have to make a bracha.
You didn't make the bracha achrona yet, so it's still continuous.
I have to make a bracha achroina from yesterday.
Right, when you wake up.
Because the taste is still in my mouth, so it's not digested.
I'm gonna go.
That the Levush is mashma that, but this is a chiddush. You look that the pshat in the first bracha that you make when you wake up in the morning, it's a bracha achroina on yesterday's learning. It's already digested. That's why in the nusach itself we say, make it, when we say Hashem, it should be sweet in my mouth. I mean, yesterday's shiur, it should still be sweet in my mouth, so I can make a bracha achroina now. Then I make Asher Bachar Banu as a bracha rishona. Okay, Rabbi say, Hashem should give us siyata d'shmaya, that we should really get hana from our learning, we should get happiness from our learning and satisfaction from our learning, and that our Birchas HaTorah should be not only Birchas HaMitzvah, but Birchas HaNenin as well.
By the way, when I was in the mirror, my roommate used to fall asleep learning and then read the daf asleep.
Wow.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.